the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok, the man of hairy breeches, to the surprise of Aella of Northumbria, of the Anglo-Saxon warriors who stood with Aella. They had captured a mighty man, a mighty warrior, and we all know who that warrior is, for he is a man, a warrior of fame, and his word fame lives on to this day, for it is indeed the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok, the man of hairy breeches, captured after a long ship he was on, sank, and he ended up surviving and landing on the coast, swimming with his son, so they say. He was soon captured and taken back to the palace where King Aella lived and had his seat of power. And they said to him, "Well, you have caused trouble. You have raided England. You have sacked Lindisfarne, taken monks, murdered nuns, murdered monks, enslaved monks, taken their gold, and you continue to cause trouble. You continue to raid. And now you must suffer a fate worse than death." The Saxons grabbed him and they threw him in a cell with bars on the window of iron. He tried to escape, but he could not. But he knew that his fate was coming, and if this did not happen, his word fame would not live on. And so the day came. Many men and women had gathered the snakes, adders from all over England, and they dug a pit. They dug down and down, digging a deep hole. They then went forth to the palace, and they found the place where Ragnar, the man of hairy breeches, was locked away. They grabbed him. They was rough. They slapped him about. They beat him. They humiliated him. But still Ragnar stood firm and stood proud of who he was and what he had achieved. And he knew, for he was a wise man, that his death was coming. And so they took him to a wood. Aella, the proud king of Northumbria, stood there, and he said, "Ragnar, this is your last day, and you will suffer a fate that you deserve." And they brought him forth. It took 4 men to hold him down, to stop him from attacking. He was a very strong Norse warrior. And they dragged him in front of the king and in front of the bishop, and many people watched. They grabbed him and they threw him into a pit of snakes. Now most mortal men at that point would die very quickly after being bitten by snake after snake. But no, Ragnar had the last laugh. And when I mean the last laugh, that is what he did. He struggled on the floor and laughing, "Ha ha 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 ha! My sons, the young pigs will have their revenge." And Ragnar shouted these words, "How the young pigs will grunt when they know how the old boar had suffered." For the old boar was indeed Ragnar, and the young pigs were his sons, Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, and Ubba. And so Ragnar laughed, in a nervous laugh, "Ha ha, you will suffer a fate worse than me." And this came true. For then, after some time, the great heathen army arrived and sacked and took Northumbria. King Aella suffered a fate worse than Ragnar, and Ragnar Lothbrok's word fame lived on to this very day and this very tale. But would you die in a snake pit of snakes? And would you laugh, or would you die quickly? Myself, I would laugh, because I know that if I was killed by being thrown into a pit of snakes, my sons will have their revenge. And this is the Norse way. This is the legend of Ragnar Lothbrok. These are the stories that we tell today, sitting around our hearths, sitting around our great halls, for the word and the fame of Ragnar lives on, and he shall be remembered as the man who had the last laugh, the man that brought about the Viking times. And oh boy, oh by the gods, did we make the Saxons suffer, for soon Northumbria collapsed. The Vikings, the Norse conquered, and Aella suffered a fate worse than Ragnar. These are the stories that we like to tell, and there are many more stories that I am going to tell on camera, and I'm so thankful for my audience in front of me, for our subscribers. And if Ragnar Lothbrok was around today, he would too be a content creator, and maybe in his spare time would go and raid Francia and England again. For this is my word fame, and these stories will be around after I am dead and waiting in the hall of the dead in Valhalla for the day of Ragnarok, where I will stand proud in the shield wall, and we will fight to the very last man and to the very last god. For on the day of Ragnarok, the gods and mortal men like me will be equal. But I won't be as strong as Odin, and I won't have a magic hammer like Mjolnir, but I'll have a sword and an axe, which is all I need. And of course we think about the great heathen army. It was not a raid, it was a force coming to England to conquer, to settle, and to take their revenge. For every man in the great heathen army and every woman had a duty to revenge Ragnar, and that is what they did. And many historians claim that Aella was blood-eagled from the back when his ribs were torn apart from the spine and his lungs were thrown over his shoulder, a slow and agonising death. But is it true? We will never know, but I like to think it is. And would you like to be blood-eagled? I would not. I would choose to die in battle than be blood-eagled by the scum Saxons. But of course, the Saxons were Christians and they would not practice such a thing. So they would cowardly throw me in a pit of snakes. I beat snakes on a plane every day. If you like this video, then do subscribe to the channel and fare thee well on your journey. Hail Ragnar, the greatest of all Vikings! Hail the Norse! And hail all those that watch!